It is September, or at least it's September as I'm filming this. It'll probably go out in October. But September this year was Magical Readathon, and so a lot of people posted a video about Magical Readathon, and I got FOMO. So I decided that the next time Magical Readathon pops up, which will be the spring equinox in April, I wanted to participate. Now, the Magical Readathon is quite expensive and there's a lot, and so it's hosted by Nghi over at Bookwire, and she hosted a beginner guide because the first few iterations were to sort of build your character, stuff like that, and she's very chill, so just choose whatever you want. You don't have to read a book for it, just whatever. But I'm an overachiever, so I wanted to do it properly and read a book for each of these things. I mean, I still have time from now until April to do them before like the spring equinox happens anyway, so I thought, why not? So today I'm gonna go over building my character and what book I would like to read for each of the prompts. The sun is really annoying me, so I'm gonna move you over a little bit. That's better. So I'm gonna go over what choice I made, what the prompts associated with those choices are, and then what book I decided to read for them. This TBR is not definitive, like if I end up reading a different book for each of these prompts, then that's fine. Like, as long as I hit the prompt by April, I'm happy. But you know what, I made a TBR. It's really funny because I associate Magical Readathon from just watching people's TBRs and stuff with like really specific, really hard prompts. But these were quite broad. Maybe like is an evolution over time from like very broad general prompts with a lot of possibilities to, you know, what it is now. So let's get into the choices. So first I had to decide about my background, which could be wildling or urban. So did I grow up in the city or grew up more in nature? And I decided to go for wildling. So I need to read a book largely set in a forest or outside. This was slightly harder than I thought because the synopsis doesn't always tell you whether it's set a lot outside or not. So I have one option, but then I sort of have a backup if the first one isn't as much outside as I thought it would be. So the first option that I have is Miss Benson's Beetle by Rachel Joyce. This is a historical fiction about a school teacher in the 1950s who gets fed up with her job and she quits, and she decides to go out to find this beetle that she doesn't even know if it exists. And you know, I think it'll be something, you know, in like that same category of books as something like A Natural History of Dragons or Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, you know, stuff like that. I think that'll sort of fit in that little category. I'm buddy reading this also in November with Kirsten over at Reading Them, so that's why that was my go-to. But if it doesn't end up being as much outside as I think it will be, then I also have as a backup Daughter of the Forest by Juliet Marillier, the first book in the Sevenwaters series. I've heard great things about this. I think it'll be right up my alley. It has been recommended to me personally by someone in a comment on one of my videos, So I think I'll really like this. So yeah, I've heard it's quite dark, but also it seems very like whimsical and stuff, which I really like. So that is the first one, Wildling, and then one of those two books, or you know, something else. Then we had to choose a province, and the options are Dayrune, Dark Meadow, Etheria, or Carador, and then there's like a booklet with some more information about each of them. I decided to go with Etheria, and for that I need to read a book that features fae or elven creatures. And that was not very hard because I am still trying to participate in the Maas Effect read-along, which is a read-along where we read everything that Sarah J. Maas has ever written, and Sarah J. Maas likes to put fae in her book. So the next one that I'm going to read is A Court of Mist and Fury. So I went with this one for, you know, this prompt, but pretty much any of her books. Well, whatever, this is just the next one that I'm going to read. Second book in the Akator series. This series probably doesn't need an introduction. So Etheria, A Court of Mist and Fury. Then I need to pick my heritage. So what creature do I want to be? There is quite a few options. None of them was fairy. So I went with the next best thing, and I decided to go with an elf. For that, I have to read a book with moon or stars on the cover or in the title. And for that, I went with A Night So Dark and Full of Stars by Nikky, is that the author? This is a short story collection, a fantasy short story collection with 12 stories, each inspired by one of the zodiac signs. I have a copy for review from the author. So I would like to read it. It will be out by the time this video. I won't be able to read it in time to read it before the release date, but I do want to read it soon. Then we also need a guild. This doesn't really like have a book to read for it. It has a list of questions and you can sort of like fill it in and it'll give you your guild, and for me that is the Guild of the Archivists, and that will have some consequences later on. Then we need to gear up, which means that we get some extra bits and pieces. We could go shopping, if you will. So first we need a conduit, and there are some conduits that are guild specific, but the conduits for the archivists don't speak to me that much, so I'm gonna go with some of the more general ones. But I can't really choose whether I want a wand or a staff, so I decided that I'm just gonna read a book for both, and then I can still decide that later on. So for a wand, I need a book with branches on the cover. And this was slightly difficult because I really wanted a book that had just a branch and not a full tree. So I have two that I have, because the first one I'm not entirely sure if it is actually a branch. Just like the English language, does this also fit into the word branch, or is this a different word? I'm not entirely sure, and that is This Poison Heart by Kalynn Bayron. I'm talking about like this thing up here. I don't know if that has a different word to describe it. But yeah, this is a book that has been on my TBR for a while. It's YA fantasy with a black main character, plant, magic. I've been wanting to try something by Kalynn Bayron for a very long time. She has great premises. So yeah, I'm quite excited for this. So let me know if this counts as a branch in the comments, if you know. If not, I have a backup option, and that is No Season But the Summer by Matilda Leyser, which is a Greek myth retelling about Persephone, except it is set many, many centuries after, like, the myth that we all think of. So like the 6 months in the other world, 6 months with our mother on Earth. We've been doing that for thousands of years by this point, and it's fine. But one time she comes to Earth in spring, and she sees that the environment is really bad, and she sees that her mother is helpless against these humans violating nature. And so she kind of becomes a nature activist, environment activist, ecological person, and starts trying to find her own identity, because so far she has always, I think the tagline is like, winter is for my husband, summer is for my mother, but when is for myself, or something like that. You may look at this cover and think, I thought you didn't want a tree. That is true, and yes, the cover are trees, but if you look at the spine, they're just isolated branches. So that's what I went with as a backup option if this wasn't hard. Doesn't really count as branches. Then for a staff, that book was, or that prompt is very easy to hit, because just read a book in a series. I'm a fantasy reader. Like, it would be a lot harder to say, like, read a book that isn't part of a series. So first I didn't want to pick a specific book for this because it is so easy, but then I thought, you know what, no, for like the sake of this video and completion and stuff, I am gonna pick a book. So I just walked like my current library checkouts and just picked the top one, which was Mammoths at the Gate, which is the fourth book in the Singing Hill cycle. It's a fantasy novella, so I'm not necessarily gonna read this one out, probably because I have checked it in the library, but I mean, like, for this prompt, there are so many options for me, but I just picked the first one that I saw, like literally like the top of the pile. So yeah, so I'm gonna read, as I said, for both Wand and Staff, and I can later on decide which one of the two I want. Then I also need a legacy, and for the archivists, that is sort of a god that we can bond with, and I decided to go for Astraea, who is the goddess of dawn and beginnings. And so for that, I had to read the first book in a series, which again is not very hard for me. So I just picked one, but it could be another one. Like, again, I'm a fantasy reader, I read a lot of series, but the one I went with is The Wickwire Watch by Jacquelyn Hagen, the first book in the Riverfall Chronicles. We have like very Dickens-esque, a bit of a genre blend with some mystery in it as well, maybe some horror in it as well. I've heard nothing but great things about this, and the author so very kindly sent me a copy that she signed, and she gave me a bookmark as well. So yeah, I'm super excited about this one. So I went with this one for Astraea. So those are the actual reading prompts that were meant to be reading prompts. But I actually have one more book right next to me because my character also needs a name. And I decided to go with Astraea, which I think is a very beautiful name. And you may think, how did you get there? How did you come up with Astraea? Well, because I looked at my bookshelf and I saw this book. This is Astraea by Jane Stevenson. It's a historical fiction about the daughter of the King of England who marries this man who was once the heir to this African kingdom, but was then enslaved, and so they sort of marry each other secretly, and they have a child, and stuff goes from there. So yeah, we have some, I think there's going to be some politics in here, set in the 17th century in the Netherlands. So yeah, that's where I got the name from. So I would like to read it, even though the name is not a reading prompt, but I thought it could be fitting. I got this for free at some point, so I decided to take it with me because it sounded kind of fun and I'd never really heard of it before. So yeah, that's this. So that is my TBR for Magical Readathon, or like my character building for Magical Readathon. These are the books that I would like to read before April to build my character. In my April TBR, where I'll make my Magical Readathon TBR, I'll just go over like my character again and tell you what books I actually ended up reading for each of the prompts, because as I said, these are not set in stone. I can read other books if I want. So yeah, this was the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you've read any of these books, let me know what you thought of them. Let me know if this Poison Heart counts as branches. And then, yeah, whatever you want to tell me. Tell me about your character in Magical Readathon if you have one. And I hope to see you again in another video. Bye!